Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for the second Creative Brief Explores webinar. And the theme is all about thriving creative partnerships and how to pivot in a crisis. Today, we'll be uncovering TBWA and the Hunwine Creative Partnership and how they managed to successfully launch a campaign amidst the crisis. So now let's meet the guys. It's Katie, TBWA's Managing Director, Andy, Chief Creative Officer from TBWA, and Mark, Co-founder and Managing Director of Hunwine. Firstly, guys, thank you so much for joining us. And Mark, I might kick off with you first, just to talk a little bit about Hunwine in general, like how you started, what were the plans, obviously before Corona hit, and how you came to find TBWA.
Yeah, so thank you. So Hun was founded, or the idea was founded in August 2019, so not that many months ago for a business. My best mate from uni, someone who I still live only about a mile away, a guy called Tom Landers, who's the co-founder, he came to me with an idea based on the fact that there was a lot of kind of various alcohol-based products coming in tins or cans, obviously gin and tonic being probably the main one. And he'd been over to the US and he'd seen canned wine kind of get a bit of a explosion out there. I mean, in the US, it's much easier for kind of canned wine to be as big as it is because there's a lot of kind of micro vineyards that can can their own product. Over here, slightly more difficult. So when we'd had a look at the UK market, we thought there was a gap for kind of great wine in a can, and then also for a brand to really kind of touch on what millennials want, which is kind of a lifestyle, social media, a brand with a voice, not just kind of a label on a can, something kind of behind it. So Hunwine was created kind of off the back of that idea, really. We chose the name Hun because especially the kind of social media millennial generation love kind of calling each other kind of, hey Hun, you okay Hun, and all this stuff. And actually our friendship group was called the Huns, our WhatsApp group. And we loved kind of everything of what kind of Hun culture was all about, which was celebrating diversity, kind of poking fun at your friends, like faux pas moments. And we thought if we can kind of change that tone of voice that is already in people's mouths and actually put a brand behind it, we could hopefully do something quite successful. So that's kind of the very short story about how it's founded. And then since then, we've obviously got to the point where we've launched the business. We're in Tesco's at the moment nationwide. We're about to launch on Amazon. And so it's been quite a kind of a quick journey from idea to where we are now.
Great. And can you just talk a little bit about, how you came to find TBWA, as well as what were the initial plans or the sort of festival things before Corona?
Yeah, so I don't often post stuff on my social media, and with it being so quick from when we kind of founded the business to now, we kept it kind of quite a secretive project, with obviously it being a slightly different idea, and with it being called Hun, and with us needing to kind of get some funding to back the idea, we wanted to keep it away from being kind of a gossip around our friendship group or even our family. So we kept everything quite under wraps. We were both still working as well at the time. So when we actually signed the papers and we got the investment and we thought, right, this is going to be a thing, I put a post up on my personal Instagram just saying kind of thanks to the people that had been involved and got us to that stage. And there's a girl called Harriet who works at TBWA, who's a creative director. She's a good friend of mine, and she saw my post on my Instagram and said, look, this sounds perfect for the pirate campaign that they run every year. So it kind of went quite quickly from then, but yeah, it was a kind of an off-the-cuff social media post, which ended up kind of I think very quickly turned into a meeting and then the partnership.
Wonderful, thank you. And Katie, what was it that in the first meeting that made you and the team just instinctively want to work with the brand Hunwine?
Aside from the fact that they brought us 3 bottles of wine into the meeting, which is always a good start. I think, at TBWA, obviously we call ourselves a disruption company, and the disruption philosophy is core to what we do for all of our client partners. And that works in one of 2 ways. We either bring disruption to those who are really disrupting the category that they're in, which clearly is the camp that Hunwine is sitting in quite firmly, or we can bring disruption to those who are being disrupted in their category and think about how we can try and help them move forward. And, you know, Harriet brought the Hun wine story to Andy and I and said, I really think there's something in this. Let's have a session with them. And within 48 hours, Mark had pulled together a specific presentation to walk us through the story. The energy was palpable. And when someone walks through your door talking about a new product that they're going to launch, and your first reaction is, why has no one done this before? You're going to bite their hand off for it because it feels like it's got a huge amount of legs.
Nice. And just following on from that, Katie, Andy, talk to us a little bit about the beginnings of the relationship, you know, from that first meeting, how ideas started to form, and just touch, if you could, on the sort of initial festival things that were in place already.
Yeah, so once that initial contact had been made and Mark and Tom came in, I mean, I think we were really, really intrigued anyway about the brand. It sounded really exciting, and we wanted to meet them face to face to see what it was all about and what their plans were. I think something that was really important is that they'd already got locked in place, you know, what can't be underestimated is the name and the brand, you know, and the branding, almost the look, you know, they had that all in place. And there's so much in that already, you know, just by that very name, by calling yourself that, it felt like they really know where they want this to go. They've got a really good understanding of the positioning of this and how they want to behave as a brand. And then in that first meeting, they were talking about, this was early March. So they were talking about British summertime, all points east. They got every sink the pink. I'm thinking, this is great. This is all the right stuff. What a brilliant time. It's going to be a long, hot summer. It's a fun, social brand. It's got a really interesting edge. It feels different as a product. This is going to be brilliant. I mean, we can do some great work on this. This is great. And then we said, well, what can we do? You know, you're not, you know, you've only been going, this was, you know, conceived 6, 8, 9 months ago. So these guys were moving fast, and we were like, well, we can deliver you some work fast, but what can we do? They're not buying loads of media, for example. It's like, well, we've got all these festivals. It was like, okay, right, that's good. And I remember a story that the Innocent guys had done at the very beginning when they set up. They went to a festival and they set up 2 buckets with their smoothie products and said, should we give up our day jobs and set up a smoothie business? People drank the smoothies and you threw your empty one in the yes or no. And it was full up with yes, so they all quit their jobs and set up Innocent. So I thought that was a really good little use of festivals as well. And I thought, even if we just write some lines or we do a little bit of some posters or some stuff around the stalls where they're selling it, we could really, really bring the brand to life and really bring the tone of voice out of that brand just around the festival circuit. And we thought, we'll have a think of other stuff you can do, maybe on social, you know, however else, you know, they're already talking to Tesco's, or they're already in Tesco's anyway. So maybe there was a bit of in-store stuff we could do as well, but quite, you know, low level. But we were just really, really bringing the richness of the brand out there was our initial reaction, what we could offer and bring to them.
Great, thanks, Andy. And then Katie, I remember you mentioned, you know, one of those meetings, and again, this was like just before it all happened with Corona, the kind of the bottles of wine story. Can you just touch on that for us?
Yeah, I mean, when Mark and Tom first came in, they brought us samples effectively of the product, because the wine is sourced from South Africa. It's a gorgeous product, and Mark and Tom kindly brought us the white, the rosé and the sparkling rosé in bottles to try. And at that stage it was still in bottles because you hadn't even had it put into the cans yet, had you, Mark? I mean, we were really moving very, very quickly. And so we had that meeting. We all went home that day. I think it was a Thursday or a Friday. And with the intention of regrouping the following week to think about how we were going to start to move this forward. And that was almost the last day in the office, because of course at that stage COVID hit. So 2 thoughts immediately start to enter our minds. Firstly, how are we going to sample this product? We haven't even tried it yet. The bottles are still on my desk back in Bankside. And secondly, what's going to happen to the festivals? You know, Andy's just touched on the fact that everything was so clearly focused around a launch strategy that was geared to putting the cans in consumers' hands in a festival environment. And very quickly, we needed to regroup both with Mark and internally on how we could try and pivot given the ongoing situation.
And like, how did the working practices or processes change? Because you had to move quite quickly and adapt. So talk to us a little bit about that, Katie, in terms of like working processes, how you had to change and pivot.
I think what's been interesting about the whole process is the team has been incredibly tight and incredibly small. So, you know, realistically, the working group at TBWA has been Jexy, myself, creative team, head of production, that's it. We've kept it very, very lean. And likewise, on Mark's side, there's been 3 core people that have been part of every single session. And I think we've allowed ourselves, because of that size, to be very lean, to be very agile, and to be very flexible when we've needed to pivot or iterate around the work. You know, we've been WhatsApping each other, Mark and I, to say we need to jump on a call in 2 hours time, and we've managed to be able to make that happen. So I think the size and the agility has been a very different way of working to how we've been used to.
Yeah. Go on, Andy.
I think we initially said to Tom and Mark that we'll come back to you in a week with some stuff. And I think that weekend was the week we closed the office and went home. And I think I'm right. I think we said, we need another week. I think we ended up going back after 10 days or 2 weeks, I think. And I think there was in that, you know, and it says everything about where we were 2-3 months ago and how we were treating the situation, because we were doing that. We're at that time where you're going, should we shake hands? Should we hug? Should we not shake hands? Oh yeah, let's do it anyway. And it's like, I mean, you can't believe it was happening, right? You know, looking back, it seems a really weird world now that you're in that stage. But that's where we were. It was at that point. And we didn't really believe that, well, we weren't taking it seriously. People weren't taking it seriously. We didn't know the impact. We knew it was on the horizon. We knew it was there. But we were talking about the festivals. We were talking about drinking outdoors. We didn't really, really think. I mean, it dawned on us very quickly, but we didn't see that. And then we had to adapt from working from home very quickly. So I think we needed to go, oh, right, okay. And things are really, really changing so fast that week. Not just working from home, but the kind of the lockdown phase was happening. It's like, we're going to need to rethink everything here.
Yes. And actually, Andy, that leads really nicely to my question around, you know, Mark, you've touched on this sort of very distinct sort of tone of voice with Hun. And, you know, we've talked about like the subculture of Hun. So, you know, I guess Andy first, but and Mark, please do create some builds. But Andy, like in the process, obviously COVID's hit. Like, how did you get to like expand that tone of voice, and how did you uncover that out of home was going to be a key channel?
I mean, Harriet and Lauren, the creative team, they always had a great understanding, I think, of what that brand should be, how it should speak, just from the name. Maybe from knowing Mark and Tom, I don't know, but I think they had an understanding of what that could be. Once the guys had come in and we'd seen the product, and you kind of go, oh, this is Hun culture. I get that. I know exactly how this brand's going to. So you've got an idea between me and the team. We're always very clear between us about what we can see, where we can see this going. I can see the potential for something really, really interesting and different here. And then I suppose we had to sort of adapt. We had to adapt because we were like, well, it wasn't even at the stage of, well, I think we just said, what if? It was sort of like a whisper. What if the festivals don't happen? It's like, don't say it. It's all going to happen. It's all going to be fine. They're going to happen, aren't they? They are, aren't they? They can't stop a festival, can they? We can't stop a festival. But what if? So I think we worked on the premise of what's the worst case scenario? What's the worst that could happen? And we were like, okay, well, the worst that can happen is that all the festivals are shut. No one goes outdoors. You've got this fantastic new sociable, fun wine brand in a can that's about enjoying it together with people outside in the sun, and you can't do that. And we're like, well, that really is the worst case scenario. So there's no media anyway. There was all around the festivals. It's like, how can you really take that? Probably, you know, it's facing up to you get faced with an obstacle of that magnitude. You go, how do you turn this into a positive?
I remember you said that you and the girls, you just asked them to just keep writing, just because you wanted just to see like how it would work. was that part of the process, just in terms of exploring ideas and writing things down?
Yeah, they got it very quickly. I mean, I said to them, the first thing we said, I think we just decided just write, because I think the brand was in place, but I hadn't ever seen it speak. So I think we said to Tom and Mark, said, let's just kind of give the brand a voice first and really nail that tone of voice. And then obviously when we presumed we knew what that was going to be, but we hadn't had any confirmation from Tom and Mark. So we kept writing on that. It felt immediately right from the very beginning when Harriet and Lauren were showing me work. It felt right. But then when we had to kind of flip and work in this worst case scenario, the work kind of took on a new life of its own. It was like, they wrote one line, I can't remember which one it was, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. That is really interesting. Oh my God. And still in the back of your mind, you're in denial of like, well, as if that's going to happen anyway, but that's a really interesting campaign. If that's the way we should do it. And that felt really, really amazing. And it was like, and in one hand you're going, I really hope the festival don't get shut down. But on the other hand, you're going, my word, we've got a great idea if they do. Yeah. And then I think, and then day after, by the hour and every day, the situation is changing and getting kind of worse, and everyone's getting locked down, and then it's official lockdown and we're all shut. And then you go, well, this is it. Festivals are shut. This is the campaign. Right on that now. Just focus on that. Don't worry about the other stuff. Just go focus on that.
Talk to us a little bit more about, Andy, that, like out of home as a channel.
Yeah. And then, so once we kind of focused on that as the idea, as in, this is the worst time to launch this brand. We sort of got that in our head of like, that's the PR, that's the thing behind that we're writing to. This is the worst possible time to launch a brand like this. And then when we thought, well, if you're going to be true to that as an idea and write to that tone and have that kind of way of communicating, where are we going to put this? Where's it going to go? Is it just going to go on social? We thought, yeah, it could go on social, but everyone's at home on Instagram watching Netflix on telly anyway. So it's like, what if this is the worst time to launch a brand? What if the worst place to put a brand at the worst time to launch it would be out of home in the street where no one is? And then we were like, well, that's great, because then we can just channel a little bit of the festival money into some key out of home sites, and then just kind of plug that on social.
I think from our side, it was it's kind of, that whole plays into the Hun tone of voice as well, because if we'd have tried to just launch this brand, not even address that it is the worst time to launch a canned wine brand, it would be untrue to kind of, again, the kind of Hun culture and kind of poking fun at ourselves as well. We never had the option or wanted to not launch this to market. But obviously, how can you not kind of say in what you do, look, guys, we realize this is the worst time to launch. And that kind of almost encompasses everything we're trying to do with the brand. We're talking to people and to consumers that almost like a consumer. And so kind of, even though it was obviously difficult for us as a business, going from an entire kind of plan of launching with these big festivals, obviously BST, I think it's the biggest festival in Europe for the amount of people that go there, to nothing, or this just kind of abyss of not knowing. This actually gave us a bit of light to go, do you know what, even though we're not doing what we want and a lot of businesses aren't, we can at least be proud and put something out there which shows the world this is still Hun, even though we've kind of have a bit of a slip up. So we loved it when they came with that, which I just looked on my phone, and actually I think it was like a 2-week turnaround between the initial meeting to then, I think it was the 31st of March, this meeting, and then it just went quicker, and we were moving every day. So the pace was something which kind of allowed it to happen, I think.
Yeah, which we'll definitely touch on. And Mark, just on that, in terms of like your initial reaction to the work, can you talk to us a little bit about that, and actually how you even engage some family members as well?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously going out of home, and we didn't want it to be kind of a woe is us scenario, because there's much bigger things happening than our business, obviously, with people's health at risk. And so when TBWA came with this campaign, and we actually kind of gave it to a couple of our family members. So my sister was involved in the building of the Nightingale Hospital, and we kind of showed her and showed her friends that were in in the kind of care practice, and they all said this is perfect. This is what we need. Almost, we need to have a bit of kind of light. It needed to happen at the right time, because there was definite moods of how people were kind of seeing and moving with the situation. So we wanted to make sure that it's a very fine line when you're being a disruptive brand to kind of go too far. But if you're a disruptive brand, you kind of have to do something which is eye-catching. But obviously there was bigger things at play than just launching our canned wine brand. So yeah, we took it out to people we knew that were in kind of care practitioners, and they all just said, we absolutely love this. So that gave me comfort as kind of the face behind the business to go, do you know what, this is great. Even though obviously the tone of voice was clearly spot on, we wanted to be mindful of the situation, of course.
Yeah, of course. You have to be really sensitive, don't we all, in these times? And I mean, gosh, what sort of journey. And I just wanted to ask Katie, like, in terms of, you know, the challenges, like, were there any challenges, if any? And if there weren't, why do you think that there weren't any challenges?
I think Mark's just touched on the importance of pitching the tone right. And I do think, you know, it's important that we talk about the fact that that was a challenge and should have been a challenge, because what's been happening over the last few months is, I'm going to use the word unprecedented. We've never seen anything like it before. And part of what our strategy here with Hun is to do is to use that to shine a light on the fact that we are launching a brand at the worst possible time. So there was certainly a moment, and Jexie will remember this, when, you know, the girls had written tons and tons and tons of lines. We had a Google Doc going with loads and loads and loads. We'd had a brilliant internal review, and we were about to share the work with Mark again the next morning. And it was about 8:30 p.m. and my phone rings and I pick it up, and Jexie says, do you think we're going too far? do you think we've pushed it too far? I just need to get this out again. And we had a little bit of a chat about it. And I think that that's what was brilliant about working so collaboratively with, you know, a team like Mark and Tom, who know their brand inside and out, who know how far they're prepared to go to push it, but also are cognizant of and smart enough to know when too far is too far. And I think, you know, that was both a challenge, but also something wondrous about our partnership together, is there was a huge shared sense of ambition around what we wanted to do with it. So I think pitching the tone is probably the biggest challenge that we faced.
You know, that's really, really clear. And, you know, earlier, Katie, you mentioned, you know, it was so strong because you were a small, lean and agile team. And obviously, you know, with Mark, your partner, together, you guys were one like integrated team. And I think, you know, that really sort of proved a benefit, didn't it, in the second wave of the campaign for the Oceans Outdoor, where you guys had 2 days to deliver. And Andy, I wondered if you could just touch on like how you delivered this sort of second wave of a campaign in such a short time frame with everything sort of going on.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was the week, I'm not sure what the date was, but that was the week when everyone was waiting for that Thursday evening Boris announcement, and that was the one that was the first sort of easing or change of kind of lockdown plans, and that ended up being pushed to Sunday night. So we were working to, I think initially we said, well, Boris, we're going to do some more, you know, the ocean thing had come about, I think we can do some more lines, we can get some more going. So we had loads more in the pipeline, but I said to the Harriet and Lauren, it'd be really nice, you know, we've got this Boris thing coming up Thursday, it'd be great if we could like write some that reflect and adapt and spring from that. So we were like, well, the turnarounds for Tuesday, it'd be fine, we can do that, that's fine, it's 4 days. And then it got moved to Sunday, and then we're like, well, we're committed to it now, we've got to do it. So and that was that ended up being the Stay Alert debacle. That was what he announced that Sunday. So there was quite, I mean, there wasn't a lot of substance in that meeting ultimately, but there were some things for us to kind of write some new lines on. And that might have been around builders going out or someone having an extra hour of exercise time, I think is what it was. So we wrote a few more lines that were reflective of that ended up being written. That was Sunday night. So we had an open Google Doc that night up until about midnight where we were just writing a few lines. We got it down to about 3 or 4, I think we wanted to do, put those into design. and then showed them to Mark 9 o'clock in the morning, I think Monday. And I think they're up by the end of Tuesday.
Mm.
I mean, wow, that is really, really, really quick. And you know, the campaign has been such a success. You know, it's been noted as being like hilarious and like tongue in cheek. And Mark, I wondered, could you just talk a little bit about the impact that it's had on Hun Wine in general?
Yeah, I think when you're trying to launch a new business or a brand, it's obviously difficult to get eyes onto you quickly without kind of huge budgets, which we don't have. We are a startup. So what it's done is one, it's very clearly defined our tone of voice, which, as Andy said, we had the idea and a strong belief, but no one had actually verbalized it probably yet. I mean, we had kind of spoke to other people who've been approached by other agencies before about various stuff, not a campaign like this, but kind of running social media, running PR, and just no one had actually kind of nailed that bit. No one seems to have got it. I could explain to them and then they could have a go, but when the creative team came back and kind of nailed that tone of voice, that was an amazing initial thing. And then for that, now that spans across our social media. If you look at how we present our pictures, it's very tongue-in-cheek, almost descriptive of what we're doing. If it's someone holding a can, we speak about this is someone holding a can, and it's kind of that tone of voice goes through everything we do now, even our PR releases. So whilst the campaign was specific to an outdoor campaign which we were putting on social, it's now kind of spanned across everything we do. And then obviously working with such a large company and respected company helps, because it adds an extra bit of value to us, which is like, oh, if they're working with those guys, they must be serious, not just these two young lads who have come up with a canned wine brand, but what they don't know what they're doing. So which we probably don't. So yeah, that was great how it spanned across a lot of the business, and not just a kind of creative PR stunt. It's actually something which has had genuine impact. I think the biggest impact for us is Amazon, which we're due to go live within a few weeks. Have actually saw the tone of voice on I think my LinkedIn, and saw it on our social, and then immediately they understood before my call, oh, this is what this brand is. And if you can go into a sales call with someone as big as Amazon, they know and love what the brand is already. You just have to walk through the door then. So I'm sure there's more of those kind of situations to come, but that's the biggest thing for me. People immediately know, oh, this is what that brand is and what that brand's going to do.
Yeah, that's just super powerful. It's what most marketeers would dream of, right? Andy, you know, we spoke earlier about this campaign. It was just welcomed, wasn't it, with open arms? And you know, why do you think that it did achieve such, or is achieving such cut through?
I mean, I think it's the time that it happened, and I think there was, as Katie mentioned, there was a point at which, you know, even I thought, can we do this? Is this right? And that wasn't about all of the lines; there were just some of them. And I think you had to measure the right time for it to launch, because there was a time when it wouldn't have been exactly right, but there was a time when people were looking for a bit of lightness, and the brands that were brave enough and capable of doing it as well, because I think this is a story of knowing who you are and being strong about knowing your brand. Because, you know, the most important thing is to communicate in a way that's relevant to you. And then if it's relevant to you, then you can be, you know, because this brand is, you know, it's got a cheek to it, but it's knowing and self-aware and self-referential. And that's where the humor comes from. And in at that time, when particularly the context of the work, advertising work, and any communication that was being done by the government or brands generally had a very similar feel to it. And it was doing a lot of the similar stuff, the unprecedented times and the people standing together. And that's for a reason. Some brands were doing it legitimately, and some brands you just kind of felt, is that your place? Whereas I think the beauty of Hun is it knows its place and it knows its role, and it knows when to kind of how to talk to people and how to show the way. And I think it landed at a time in the context where no one was really doing that. So it felt refreshing, and it felt people weren't, oh God, at last. So the most responses and in stuff that I got back from people was like, at last, someone's done some work like that. Good. You know, it's like, I've been waiting for someone to do this. It's almost like people had just been waiting for something like that to happen. So yes, it got, I mean, I'm talking about industry people there, really, generally, in that kind of response. So I think it was very much a show of strength of knowing the brand, knowing itself, and knowing when it should kind of, when it can talk, and the context in which it kind of happened, I think.
Great. Thank you. I mean, you guys clearly have, you know, a great partnership. I just wanted to open up to Katie, just, you know, just generally, like, in terms of great partnerships, like, what do you think are like the key elements of a great partnership?
I think it's been said before and it will be said again, but it's a true testament of the trust that Mark placed in us, and the trust that we had in him, and his, you know, as Andy says, his total embodiment of what the Hun brand was. I think there is, when you're launching a new brand, you don't have the data to tell you what consumers think about you. You don't have the data to tell you what you should be doing. So a lot of what you need to do is listen to your gut and listen to your instinct. And I think there was a huge trust between all of us. And that ultimately is what the foundation of any great partnership is built on, to trust our gut, because we knew that we were aligned around the ambition. So trust to facilitate a wonderful partnership, and alignment around what ultimately you're trying to do, I think are two key factors in this, and also other brilliant relationships.
Definitely. And Mark, did you have any sort of key learnings at all to share throughout this sort of whirlwind process during, you know, the coronavirus crisis?
I think we're in a fortunate position where, as Kate said, we're obviously a very small team at the moment, so we can make decisions quickly. But I think where kind of big businesses, and I did previously work for 6 years at a very large business, where they fail sometimes is they probably don't allow decisions to be made in these small teams quickly. So if you can find a way, and clearly kind of these guys have, because they did it with us, even though they're a huge organization, if you can find a way to have kind of pocket of teams that are very trusted and really get what they're trying to achieve, and not have X person from the board come in here and X person from the management come here. And that's kind of the biggest thing, which goes back to what Kate said around trust. So we're lucky we're a startup, but if you're not a startup, you can still create that kind of, you always hear about these big companies that have startup culture, which probably means, to me, you've got the ability to trust people in small groups to deliver on something great. And if it doesn't happen, then you kind of can go again, because it's not going to be a hit kind of every time. So we're lucky in that sense, but that's probably the learning, which I probably knew already, but now just kind of seeing it again.
Brilliant, thank you. And lastly, Andy, any sort of final learnings or takeaways for everyone?
I mean, I think it's a summary of what everyone's kind of said in a way. I mean, I think I'm a big believer in that, you know, brands knowing their place and when to talk and how to talk, and sometimes they can help and sometimes they can show the way. And I think, you know, the trust involved in this relationship is kind of evident. I think working at speed was really, really important. But also just having the instincts, you know, and the gut to kind of make those decisions with confidence, and creating work that speaks in that way as well, I think really helped.
I think just got a quick one that I just thought of is, I think we'd probably all said this has been really fun. So the actual process, I mean, Hun is a fun brand by kind of its essence, but it's actually been really fun. Every time they came with a creative presentation, we were excited. And I actually had, I live with my girlfriend and one of our friends, and they both used to jump on the sofa and watch it from the background because they were excited to see it. And we shared it to my sister and people, they were excited. And if you have that fun and excitement, like these guys said, they were working late on a Sunday, that doesn't matter anymore, does it? Because it's fun. And I think sometimes when you're trying to be creative, and I'm not the most creative person, but I think I can look at creative stuff and have a view on it. If it's fun, then creativity will kind of come and happen. And like kind of Andy said to us a few weeks ago, Harriet probably had 200-300 lines she could have come up with. And it was almost like bringing it down as opposed to kind of coming up with things. So yeah, I think for me that was a big thing. Kind of try and keep it fun and keep it passionate, as opposed to, oh God, we've got this presentation. Oh God. And I think if your brand or your business is set up in that way, then it'll probably be a better experience.
What a nice place to end on, guys. Just a huge thank you to Katie, Andy and Mark for you guys sharing your story. And to those at home, we really hope that you enjoyed this webinar. And if so, do note that the next one is on July 2nd, featuring British Gas and the Yan Partnership. But for the meantime, please, take care and be well. And thank you so much again. Bye-bye.